Right now, we have a lot of people out of work and a lot of firms out of business. We also face a global and local skills shortage just when we want to build back better from the COVID pandemic. And we all want that, don't we? A better future post-COVID. Ko Clefini tōku ingoa. And my vision for Aotearoa New Zealand is that we become a learning society as part of that recreation of Aotearoa. Why a learning society? Because my 35 years of environmental management and training have demonstrated firsthand to me the incredible business benefits and the changes in human potential that good environmental training can deliver. Post-COVID, we know that we need to create an economy that delivers social, cultural and environmental benefits as well as economic. That means we need to turn every job into a green job, and fast. So the wonderful Pounamu jewel that is Aotearoa New Zealand has many facets, and our visions will be unique to each of us. My particular vision relates to just one wee facet, which is environmental training. Unlike other environmental experts, I'm no longer a specialist in one deep topic. Instead, I draw upon the skills of the world of professional trainers to help those experts deliver the great training that only they can do. And I can do that because I've been a member of the New Zealand Association of Training and Development for 25 years. And I've become absolutely fascinated by the role that business can play in the environment, a brilliantly constructive role. Now, we had the wellbeing budget come out in May this year, and it is addressing all four well-beings: social, cultural, economic and environmental. It doesn't specifically mention climate change, but we have got the opportunity to do something about that anyway. So when we look at the role of business in this, I go back to a paper I read in 1999. And it was written by someone about the Fortune 500 companies. These are America's biggest listed companies. And the author wondered, what made the ones at the top perform so much better than the ones in the bottom 500? Well, the difference was the ones at the bottom were more likely to have very bad staff relations, terrible customer relations. They were often in trouble with the tax department. And what struck me was they were more likely to be polluters. So if they were bad at the environment, they were bad at everything. Good at the environment, good at everything. And that is what I realised through my years of training. Get people good at environment, they get good at everything. So some years ago, I was really lucky to be involved with a highly successful environmental training program. It's a success to all of us by surprise. I ended up writing a book about that program and many, many other environmental training programs to set out the 7 factors that contributed to that success. And so this is the area where I now specialise. So this is how I have realised that good environmental training helps build a learning society. Because we learn our way to a better world. That might start with workplace training, but it can continue with learning like we used to go to the colleges for night school and just take courses out of interest, lifelong and life-wide learning. And of course, the holy grail for businesses is to become a learning organisation. This is Peter Senge's thing. He's written so much about it. And then here is the book by Joseph Stiglitz, and he's written about the Learning Society. Now, I was thinking about this, I was thinking, yes, I'll call this presentation the learning economy. That's what we have to be. And then I thought, well, actually, the economy is a subset of society. So I thought, I'll call it the Learning Society. And then I looked around my bookcase and I found that I had the book called The Learning Society, written by Joseph Stiglitz, an award-winning, Nobel Prize-winning economist. And his whole book is a justification of businesses becoming learning organisations and creating a learning society. It's extraordinary. I have now read the book except for the equations, and I really love the way the man thinks. So when we were in lockdown, yes, it was very difficult for a lot of people in many, many different ways. But some of the things we did as well, we reclaimed our streets. Suddenly they were safe for us and our children. People could go biking. And so now there are so many initiatives around building back better. Now, interestingly, coming back to Stiglitz, when he analysed the recovery from the GFC, he found that the most successful government stimuli were green stimuli. They outperformed by miles all other forms of government stimulus. And he's come out recently saying, yes, it still applies. And Christiana Figueres, who was one of the lead negotiators on climate change in a recent interview on Radio New Zealand with Guy and Espiner, she said the same. And she said, we're spending so much money. There are trillions of dollars sloshing around the world economy to get the economy going again. But if we build in the old ways, we're going to be in deeper trouble. She says for that reason, she thought we had about 10 years to get on top of the climate change. She said, no, forget it. We've got a year to 18 months to rebuild it back in. So we do have this incredible urgency to get it all done. So when Stiglitz says, yes, massive investment in green technologies is the best fiscal stimulus you can possibly have, we need to listen to the man. And he's got hard criteria that we can use to assess the effectiveness of our environmental stimulus packages, our green stimulus packages, if you will. But how do we decide exactly what we're going to tackle? There's plenty of helpful material out there. The International Labour Organization has put out a wonderful report, the GAIN report, and it's really putting people first, people back into work, work that repairs the environment. This is what's called a just transition. We don't put people out of jobs that aren't sustainable. We change those jobs, or we retrain the people so that they are working in sustainable jobs, so that even our sunset sectors can turn into sunrise sectors. And we can actually do three things at once. We can tackle climate change, biodiversity and inequality. And these are all things that agencies like the World Economic Forum have long been signalling are some of the greatest global threats that we face. So what is a green job? Well, the International Labour Organization defines them as decent jobs. They pay well, they have good conditions, people like working in them. And they reduce consumption of energy and raw materials. They limit greenhouse gas emissions. They minimise waste and pollution, protect and restore ecosystems, and help us adapt to climate change. To me, this is why creating a learning society is so incredibly important. And all of these jobs are going to need training. And so as we become learning organisations and the individuals learn more and know more and can conduct their jobs with more skill, this is how we build the learning society. So there are many, many training initiatives around in government. Reform of vocational education, water, construction, the Apprenticeships Fund. We've got giant green stimulus, which is great. Joseph Stiglitz would be very happy. Universities thinking their role with respect to climate change. So many bodies and people out there doing environmental training. So much environmental training is done within sectors and it's done in-house. A Teletrack Navman survey last year of the construction sector found that 50% of environmental training is done in-house. Yes, you can do some through the training organisations and through university, but actually it also has to be done on the job in-house. But how do we capture the information about how much training is being done? How do we perhaps get those people some kind of recognised qualifications around that? So here's an example of a strategic approach to environmental training. I think it needs to be sector specific, and I'll show you one that I did for the stormwater sector for Water New Zealand. Basically, we had over 300 stormwater professionals list what their training needs were. Now, what are you going to do with that? You can group it under headings if you like. You can do them by alphabetical order. You can do them by the number of training courses that already exist. But you still have a very long list. You need some kind of unifying principle or some kind of concept. The concept I chose to organise this massive amount of information was the water-sensitive urban design cycle, where we're starting with research and planning. We assess the catchment, physical and natural. We start designing our cities for water-sensitive operation. We build the cities and the stormwater systems. We do our planting. Then we have a handover from the developer to the council in good order. We have our operation and maintenance. And most importantly, we have our monitoring and evaluation. Did all of our planning, design, construction and operation deliver the beneficial water-sensitive outcomes we wanted? Now, if you were going to get all of that right, we ended up with over 40 courses and a number of different disciplines, from surveyors to people who work with stream ecology to construction people. It's just extraordinary. Asset managers, the lot. But at many stages of that cycle, we also need generic skills. We need te ao Māori, ngā tauranga Māori. We need community engagement skills. We need conflict resolution skills. These are skills that everybody throughout the whole sector needs, on top of these highly specialised and very diverse skills for stormwater. And then the 11th group of training skills are those that further develop the stormwater sector and can change the world. Well, what would that look like if it were your sector? You need some kind of organising principle. So it might be the waste hierarchy or the resource hierarchy, as we could be calling it. It could be the circular economy. It could be regenerative farming. It could be the energy hierarchy. Any kind of concept that makes it easy for people to navigate the topics of training. Because what do I see? I see lists of training Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, June, July, August. Or it's alphabetical order. How are you ever going to be able to work in a multidisciplinary fashion, which we've never needed more than now, if you can't see who's working in the silo next to you? So this organising principle helps you categorise, classify, prioritise, navigate and evaluate the effectiveness of your training. This is absolutely crucial. So within those technical skills, you give people strategic skills that develop the whole sector and its many disciplines. But you know, we should not keep our environmental skills in the environmental silo. We need to export people to where they're desperately needed, into Parliament, into councils, onto boards of directors, onto trusteeships of charitable or community enterprises, into iwi groups, because every job must be a green job. Every organisation must be a learning organisation, and we need to learn about the environment fast. And this is how we can do it. And you know, the ecological cost of getting it wrong is horrific. There are estimates of the value of ecosystem services to the economy that are in the tens and hundreds of trillions of dollars. This is things like pollination, cleaning our air, cleaning our water, rejuvenating our soil, growing our food. But we are also losing trillions of dollars in that value as we trash the environment in search of the great GDP, the one number that rules them all. And we also have an opportunity cost, which the World Business Council for Sustainable Development has identified as a $4.5 trillion a year opportunity for social, economic and environmental change. This is the transition to the circular, the sustainable economy. How do we measure that money? Well, 70 odd stock exchanges or more around the world now require their listed companies to report against 6 forms of capital. So you know the classical annual report, columns of numbers. That's the financial capital, and they often report on their manufactured capital. Buildings, plant and equipment, vehicles, computers, you know, that sort of stuff. Then we have our human capital. So this is intellectual capital. It might be patents or trademarks. It could just be that as a firm, you've got a unique or better way of doing things, and so people come to you. Social and relationship capital. Are we a good corporate citizen in the towns where we operate? Do we have a ethical value chain? So some years ago, Air New Zealand stopped serving prawns. Why? They identified slavery in the supply chain. And so they stopped ordering those prawns until they could work with those providers to eliminate slavery and give decent employment to people at reasonable wages. So the intellectual and the social and relationship capital are collective capitals. Now, every time you do training, you're also adding to your human capital because you're giving that person more life skills. And just as one example of this, one of the companies I worked for, they had to do some literacy training so that the people could understand the designs for the environmental controls they were building and build them correctly without rework. So when I was at a meeting of the New Zealand Association of Training and Development in a room full of professional trainers, a video was shown about this work, and they interviewed this man, and he was saying that for the first time he could help his children with their homework, and they would all sit around and talk over dinner and after dinner. So this is the kind of life-changing benefit that can occur. So of course that's going to be multi-generational because of his relationship with their children, their relationship to their own learning. This stuff, honestly, just about everyone in the room, the big strong men and all these hardened old professional trainers and me, we were all just about in tears with this story. It was amazing. So to these 3 forms of human capital, I have added Indigenous capital, which is another form of collective capital. And it is, to me, immensely valuable. So for example, just one tiny example, iwi agencies will plan for 100 years, 200 years, 500 years or more. So if we had started doing this earlier last century, I don't think we'd be in the fix we are now. And we have such a lot to learn from each other. But surrounding all of these forms of capital is, of course, natural capital. Monetising this is a highly contested area, but we do earn money from our natural environment. We will earn less and less if we continue to trash it. So I think an argument can be made for at least attaching some numerics until we get to the point where it is also valued for its intrinsic and spiritual values, and these are referred to in the literature. So when we come to New Zealand, we've got our own wellbeing framework, which has got 4 capitals: social, cultural, economic and natural. So they equate very well to the 7 capitals that I like to follow, and many domains of wellbeing, detailed indicators that we can all measure and we can all report against. And this will now include carbon as we get to the Net Zero Carbon Act. I think too, you know, we can look at the unbelievable business, human, community and environmental value of good environmental training, but we can look at the costs to the companies of getting it wrong as well. One company that I worked with, they had a giant spill. I mean, it was really quite serious. It was a 24-hour clean-up operation. They had the council there, they had all the clean-up, and they did a fabulous job of that clean-up. So good that the council decided to issue no enforcement action at all. So they came to me and said, can you help us add up the cost of that spill? And it came to $152,000. That's no lawyers. So obviously we're not going to have giant spills like that happen all the time, But on one of my ROI workshops, the return on investment of environmental training, someone just decided to play with the concept, which had happened the day before on a work site she was working with, a spill of 1 cubic metre of concrete. That's not much, you know, it's not a lot. It came to $10,000. $10,000 for 1 cube of concrete. How many construction sites, vertical and horizontal, up and down the country, would have 1 cube spills of concrete all day, every day, and it's costing them 10 grand? This is not stuff that appears in the balance sheets. This is a giant drain on our productivity as a nation, and we need to be counting this stuff very seriously. And there are other definitions where environmental training adds humongously to our productivity. For example, people who leave work, around 12% of people will leave a job even though they get good training. You know, they just want to move on to the next thing. But if they've got poor training or no training, it can cost you 2 to 4 times, or you will lose up to 48% of your staff will plan to leave within a year. This is a lot of people to be leaving your company. If you're looking at your best and brightest, the ones you want to recruit, the ones you want to retain, they want to work for companies that are addressing climate change, that are preventing environmental harm, and that are doing some good in the world. You want those people working for you, you have to be working in the right way. And the financial benefits of good training are more than repaid in staff recruitment and retention, in their staff engagement, and of course their productivity, which adds real value to the business bottom line. I see training as a pathway to a high skills, high wage economy, high value with skilled workers. And this means that you get to the learning organisation. So Michael Porter, who is the most cited author by orders of magnitude in the entire publishing history of the Harvard Business Review, and Peter Senge, who's the proponent of the learning organisation, they say practising new knowledge, continually gaining it, this is how we stay ahead of the competition. And just from my own experience, just in the civil construction sector, let alone others, one company that they ignored the warning signs about compliance because this is a high compliance sector. They got prosecuted, they freaked out, the directors wanted to be paid out of the business, that weakened its financial position so badly, it was sold for next to nothing to another company, and a very good, well-regarded firm went out of business. Now another company, this one had prosecutions up and down the country. Their worldview was that the councils were trying to put them out of business. But they realised, like it or not, they had to clean up their Environmental Act. They rolled out incredible quality training from the board of directors all the way through the company, all the way to the people actually doing the coalface work on the site. 4 years later, their turnover had tripled. The CEO was at a complete loss to explain. He said, well, look, I can understand how environmental training could contribute 25% of that increase in turnover. He was at a loss to explain the other 75%. I know where it was. It's because they became a learning organisation. You cannot keep that environmental skill. That genie does not stay in the bottle. It goes out throughout the whole company. And that company continues to do exceptionally well, and they are accelerating their organisational learning. And another client of mine has cut straight to the chase. They are setting up formal processes for all kinds of environmental training in-house because they know that they'll get the quality, they'll get the staff engagement. So if we are looking at COVID recovery, but better than recovery, if we are going to recreate our economy into a well-being economy, and if we're going to become a learning society, this is the trajectory of the learning organisation. So along the x-axis, we're looking at the quality of the change as it moves from transactional to transformational from the point of view of the industry. Up the y-axis, we've got the drivers of change. Are they external drivers or are they internal drivers? And so you can see our poor old company that got sold for a song would have been in reactive mode. In fact, they were worse than that because they didn't react to the compliance signals that they were getting from the council. Then we saw our other firms start to cooperate with the council and then take preventative action to protect the environment. What that company then discovered was that they gained a competitive advantage. This was another contributor to that tripling of turnover. But you know, when people keep on looking at this, when they start to develop reflexive awareness about what it is that they're doing, when they learn how to learn and leverage off that process, then they start opening up where they become very proactive. They're integrating all of the external signals around the environment, the economy, social, cultural aspects, the 7 capitals in fact, into how they do business. They then become a truly creative organisation. And so to me, this is what it looks like to be a learning organisation. So if we're starting to line up all the outcomes to make sure that we're measuring everything we should, we need to check that we have those 7 elements of successful environmental training programs in place. They'll have different weights to them, but they all need to be there. And that's all set out in my book. Professional trainers recognise 5 levels of evaluating the effectiveness of training. Level 5 is financial return on investment. And a truly amazing Australian trainer, Dr. Alistair Rylett, who was also an ecologist, identified 2 more levels, including sustainability, which is, have we embedded that culture of the learning organisation such that it will survive changes in structure, even changes in leadership? And then the highest level, level 7, is spreading the word. And you will see that companies that really get it help everyone they can to get there too. So then we look at the 7 capitals. So this is our 4 well-beings in New Zealand with all of the amazing indicators that Treasury and Statistics New Zealand have put together in our 12 domains of well-being. So 7 capitals that add value, and environmental training directly adds to all of those capitals. Then of course we've got the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And we are a signatory to those goals. Again, they have detailed indicators. We report to the UN on that. Around the outside, that sort of halo flare, is Johan Rockström's 9 planetary boundaries, put together by a team of about 300 scientists working with him through the Stockholm Resilience Institute. So we are already living beyond our credit limit in several of them. Nitrogen, biodiversity, climate change are the outstanding examples. And so everything we do, we should be lining up to say, how much of a difference are we making to these critical things while doing good business, delivering good governance, delivering good service in whatever aspect of life that we're engaged in. So Kate Raworth came to the Auckland Writers' Festival last year in 2019 because she'd heard about the government's first wellbeing budget. She's written this very famous book on donut economics. It's well worth a read. She's an absolutely brilliant speaker. She has identified a conundrum. No country has ever ended human deprivation without a growing economy. And no country has ever ended ecological degradation with one. What does that mean? You grow the economy, you trash the environment. You protect the environment, you trash the economy. So she doesn't believe that anyone has solved it, but New Zealand has got a wellbeing budget. This is our challenge as a nation, if we choose to accept it. Aotearoa, as a learning society, can grow a wellbeing economy, because as well as counting GDP, we can look at other measures of economic success. We can look at social, cultural and environmental outcomes as well. You know, I reckon if we try this, we will crack the Raworth conundrum. So my challenge to all of us visioneers is that by the end of Vision Week, we have reimagined what we do as a green job, whether it's paid or unpaid. Capture that vision. What would that decent job look like for the people working in it, for the sector that those jobs are in? List 3 things that you will actually do to realise that vision, and by when. If you're a sector, prepare an environmental capability and capacity plan, because not only do we have a shortage of skills, we haven't got the headcount either. So look at the example of the EPIC program that Civil Contractors New Zealand did, where they recruited an amazing diversity of beautiful young people into the civil construction sector. It was an amazingly successful program. So prepare a plan, show the government you know what you're doing, make the business case for some funding so that we can embed true sustainability into how we recover and recreate from the COVID crisis. Tell other people and get going. To conclude, I want to acknowledge the vision of Paul Blair and Infrastructure New Zealand in setting up Vision Week. We have demonstrated that we're a genuine team of 5 million people. If anyone can do this, we can. Thank you for hearing me out. Let's get out there together, helping each other to learn our way to a sustainable economy.